For most of us, retirement feels like the finish line, doesn't it, mate? You work hard for decades, put money into your super, chip away at the mortgage, and every year you watch that super balance slowly grow. In the back of your mind, you're counting down the days until you can finally call it quits. You imagine retirement as the reward after years of hard work. And to be fair, for the first couple of weeks, it does feel pretty great. You sleep in, finally get around to fixing things around the house, maybe enjoy a few lazy mornings without an alarm clock, and you tell everyone how good it feels not having to rush anywhere. But then somewhere around week 3 something changes. It's something hardly anyone talks about before retirement, yet it catches so many Aussies completely by surprise. The first real challenge of retirement isn't actually about money. It's something much deeper, and that's exactly what I want to talk about first because it sets the stage for everything else in this video. Just picture this for a second. It's a random Tuesday morning, maybe 3 or 4 weeks after you've retired. There's no meeting to get to, no emails piling up, no boss expecting a reply before lunchtime. For the last 30 or 40 years, your days have followed a routine that work basically created for you. It gave you a reason to get out of bed, somewhere to be, people who relied on you, and a way of knowing whether you'd had a productive day or not. Then suddenly all of that disappears overnight. A lot of retirees describe this feeling, and it's surprisingly hard to explain. It's not really sadness, and it's not exactly boredom either. It's more like you're floating through the day without any real direction. Nobody's waiting for you, nobody needs you, and nothing on the calendar has your name on it. After spending decades being needed every day, that feeling can be a lot more unsettling than most people expect. Before long, one quiet question starts creeping into your mind. So, what am I actually supposed to do now? Let me paint a picture because it's easier to understand this way. Imagine a bloke called John. He spent 38 years working for the same company. On his last day, everyone clapped, gave him a nice watch, took a few photos, and wished him all the best for retirement. It felt like a fantastic send-off. But fast forward just 3 weeks. John's sitting alone at the kitchen table at around 10:30 on a Tuesday morning. His wife is out, his mates are all still at work, the phone hasn't rung once, and that's when it really hits him. Not because he misses the actual job, but because he misses feeling useful. For 3 weeks, nobody's asked him for help, nobody's needed anything from him, and he doesn't quite know how to deal with that. Now, John's not a real person, but if you've spoken to enough retirees, you've probably met someone just like him. And here's the important bit, mate. None of this has anything to do with how much money John has sitting in the bank. Research here in Australia has shown this happens surprisingly often, and it usually follows a pretty similar pattern. Around that 3rd week, the excitement starts wearing off and the quiet becomes a bit louder than expected. By about the 3rd or 4th month, many retirees go through what's often called an identity dip. The question changes from "what should I do today?" to something much bigger like, "who am I now that I'm no longer the person I used to be?" By around 6 months, most people have either settled into a new routine or they're still drifting along, wondering why retirement doesn't feel the way they imagined it would. The people who adjust the best usually have one thing in common. They don't wait for purpose to magically appear. They deliberately replace the structure work gave them with something new. Psychologists have been saying this for years. We don't just work for the paycheck. Without even realizing it, work gives us structure, purpose, social connection, and a sense of achievement all at the same time. So when all 4 disappear on the very same day, your brain treats it as a major life transition. That's why someone can have absolutely no financial worries, a healthy super balance, and plenty of savings, yet still feel anxious, unsettled, or a bit lost. There's nothing wrong with them at all. That's simply how we're wired. And that's exactly why John's biggest problem was never really his super balance. Which brings us to the financial side of retirement, because that's where things get really interesting. Now, when it comes to money, retirees usually fall into one of 2 camps, mate. On one side, you've got the people who finally feel free to spend. After decades of working hard, saving every dollar they could, and watching every expense, retirement feels like permission to finally enjoy life. They book the bigger holidays, renovate the house, spoil the grandkids, help the kids out financially, and generally loosen the purse strings a bit. And honestly, after working for so long, you can understand why. They've earned it. The problem is, though, that the spending habits you create in that very first year of retirement often stick around for the next 20 or 30 years. Australians are living longer than ever, which means retirement can easily last 25 or even 30 years. If you spend as though the first year is the only year that matters, the second half of retirement can end up looking very different from the first. Then you've got the complete opposite group, and believe it or not, they're just as common. These are the underspenders. They're the people who have spent their entire working life being careful with money, and that mindset doesn't suddenly disappear just because they've retired. Even with a healthy super balance sitting there, they're almost scared to touch it. They keep living far more modestly than they actually need to, not because they have to, but because they're worried about running out of money one day. In a way, it's a strange kind of financial poverty. The money is there, but the fear of spending it stops them from enjoying the lifestyle they've spent decades working so hard to build. The sweet spot sits somewhere between those 2 extremes, and that's where understanding the numbers really matters. Here's something a lot of people don't know. There's an organization called the Association of Superannuation Funds of Australia, or ASFA, and every quarter they release something called the Retirement Standard. It's basically a guide showing how much income Australians need for different lifestyles in retirement. According to the 2026 figures, if you're a single homeowner wanting what's considered a comfortable retirement, you'll need about $55,923 a year. For a couple, it's around $78,566 annually. Now, when they say comfortable, they're not talking about flying business class every holiday or buying investment properties. They're talking about having private health insurance, being able to replace your car when it's getting old, enjoying meals out occasionally, and taking a decent holiday without constantly stressing about the cost. If you drop back to what's considered a modest lifestyle, the difference is roughly $20,000 a year for singles and close to $27,000 for couples. Over 25 years of retirement, that difference adds up to hundreds of thousands of dollars and can completely change the lifestyle you get to enjoy. Now let's talk about the age pension, because this is another area where a lot of people get caught out. As of March 2026, the full age pension is roughly $31,000 a year for a single person, and just over $47,000 a year for a couple combined. On its own, that's well below what's considered a comfortable retirement, which is why ASFA estimates that a single homeowner retiring at age 67 should ideally have around $630,000 in super, while a couple should have around $730,000. Interestingly, those targets actually increased this year for the first time in 3 years, mainly because the cost of living has continued rising faster than pension payments. That's really what your super is there for, mate. It fills the gap between what the age pension provides and what a comfortable retirement actually costs. There's also quieter change that's worth knowing about because it can affect some retirees without them even realizing it. Centrelink uses something called deeming rates to estimate how much income your financial assets are earning when they assess your age pension eligibility. In March 2026, those deeming rates increased again. They're currently 1.25% on financial assets up to the lower threshold and 3.25% on anything above that. Depending on your situation, those changes can influence how much age pension you're entitled to receive, so it's definitely something worth keeping an eye on. But here's the thing, mate. Retirement isn't only about money. In fact, one of the biggest adjustments has nothing to do with your bank account at all. Relationships often change much faster than people expect once retirement begins. If you're retiring with a partner, you've probably gone from spending a few hours together in the evenings to suddenly being in the same house all day, every day. That's a pretty big adjustment for anyone. Couples who have happily lived parallel lives for decades suddenly have to work out how to actually share their days together, and that usually takes a bit of patience, a bit of communication, and if we're honest, a pretty good sense of humor. At the same time, many people also discover that a huge part of their social life came from work. The colleagues you used to see every weekday slowly become occasional coffee catch-ups, then maybe Christmas messages, and before you know it, those regular connections have quietly disappeared. Most people don't realize just how much of their social world revolved around work until work is no longer part of their life. So mate, what does a smart first 12 months of retirement actually look like? Well, the biggest mistake you can make is trying to figure it all out after you've already retired. The planning really needs to start before your last day at work. Sit down and work out roughly what you think you'll spend in your first year, then think about year 5 and even year 15. It doesn't have to be perfect, but having a plan is a whole lot better than simply guessing as you go. If it suits your situation, look at moving your super into pension phase as early as it makes sense, because once your super is in pension phase, the tax treatment on investment earnings is generally more favorable. Leaving it sitting in accumulation phase longer than necessary could end up costing you more tax than you need to pay. It's also worth applying for an age pension assessment, even if you're convinced you won't qualify for the full payment. Plenty of Australians are eligible for a part pension without even realizing it, and that can unlock extra benefits and concessions that make a real difference. Another smart move is keeping a cash buffer outside your investments, ideally enough to cover around 1 or 2 years of living expenses. That way, if the share market has a rough year, you're not forced to sell investments at the worst possible time just to cover your bills. And here's one that often gets overlooked. Build your weekly routine before you retire, not afterwards. Whether it's volunteering, joining a local club, taking a class, catching up with mates every Tuesday morning, or working on a personal project, having regular commitments already in place makes the transition much smoother. Waiting until you're bored before trying to build a routine almost never works. The truth is, mate, the first year of retirement doesn't just shape that first year. It often sets the tone for the next 20 or even 30 years. Get the financial side right, and your savings can support the lifestyle you've worked so hard to create. Get it wrong, and the gap between simply getting by and living comfortably can become something you feel every single year. But even then, money was never the whole story. Remember that quiet Tuesday morning we talked about right at the beginning? The one where John was sitting alone at the kitchen table wondering what he was supposed to do with himself? The happiest retirees aren't the ones who somehow avoid mornings like that, because the truth is, everyone has them. The difference is what they choose to do next. Instead of waiting for purpose to magically appear, they create it themselves. They replace obligation with something meaningful, whether that's spending time with family, helping the community, learning new skills, traveling, or simply doing things they've never had time for before. They build a life that feels rewarding on their own terms, and that's what separates the people who truly enjoy retirement from those who spend years just drifting through it. More often than not, it has very little to do with how much money is sitting in their super account. At some point, your career stops being your whole identity and simply becomes one chapter of your life. The real question isn't whether you're ready to stop working, it's whether you're ready to start living a little differently. Your first year of retirement won't decide everything, but the habits, routines, and mindset you build during that first year can shape the decades that follow. If you found this video helpful, do me a favor, mate, and give it a like. It really does help the channel reach more Australians who could benefit from this information. And if you enjoy straightforward, no-nonsense content about money, retirement, and life here in Australia, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because there's plenty more coming your way.